Welcome, and thank you for joining us for this Satori software webinar, Introduction to RedPoint Data Management for Postalsoft DQ Users. Before we get started, I'd like to cover just a couple of very quick housekeeping items. First off, if you participate in social media, you can connect with Satori software via Twitter, on LinkedIn, and on Facebook. Next, this webinar is being recorded. The recording will be available shortly after this broadcast, and you can find it on the webinars page of satorisoftware.com. Next, there's a question box on the right-hand side of your screen. Please feel free to enter any questions you may have as we go along during the webinar. I'll be collecting those at the end and presenting them to Brian and Lyle at the end during a question and answer section. Finally, this webinar is scheduled to last around 60 minutes. However, in the event that we run long or you have to drop off for another reason, as I mentioned, it will be posted on satorisoftware.com, and the entire webinar in its entirety, the questions and all, will be included in there. I'm Rob Perrin, the Director of Merchandising for Satori Software, and I will be your host today. Also joining me, as I mentioned, in place of Lou Peduto is Brian King, Senior Regional Sales Executive. Hello, Brian.
Good morning, Rob. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for subbing in. Also joining us is Lyle Myers, Senior Data Quality Solutions Consultant. And Lyle, I got your title right that time.
Thanks, Rob.
Now, you've broadcasted from the trunk of a car once before and from the freeway. Where are you today?
I'm actually in an office.
In an office. That's good. Settled in, comfortable. We won't hear any sirens in the background today.
Not today.
Fantastic. Today's topics, we're going to be talking about why the timing remains critical with the SAP Postalsoft DQ end of life and the announcement, introducing RedPoint Global, the unique urgency of replacing ACE, preserving job-based workflow processes. Lyle will be doing his technical demonstration. We'd like to talk about how Satori can help and some next steps. So with that, Brian King, take it away.
Great. Thanks, Rob, and thanks, everybody, for joining. So before we jump feet first into this session, we want to take a brief historical perspective on how we got to the point we are today. And, you know, the interesting part is that my journey and career kind of follows this path as well. So I started at Postalsoft in 1995 and had the opportunity to work with a lot of these products throughout my career. The change into First Logic, the eventual acquisition by Business Objects, the acquisition of Business Objects by SAP, and then this end-of-life announcement that SAP has issued. But before this end-of-life announcement, if you remember, Satori did acquire some assets from SAP, mainly your pre-sort, print form, and some other utilities around the mail sortation and preparation technology. Our goal at Satori is to get back to a very customer-intimate model and really provide you with industry-leading technology around your business, understanding the mail preparation, printer publisher spaces, and that's really why we're here today, to talk about this end-of-life announcement by SAP around your ACE, data write, match, and consolidate technology, to talk about what you should be focusing on now and some solutions that Satori has brought to bear to not only replace these technology, but allow you to evolve your business, enhance your functionality, and really take everything up to the next level. So Rob, there we go. So from a time sensitivity standpoint, you all you're on this call, you've seen these announcements. You understand that SAP is ceasing to continue their support around ACE, data write, match, consolidate at the end of March this coming year. So what does that mean to you? Well, it means that the technology will not be supported, enhancements will not be made after this date. The initial focus, and what we're suggesting that our clients focus on, is the regulatory aspect initially, right? The CAS certification to ensure that you have directories that are updated that allow you to meet your demands of submitting mail and having clean addresses with respect to USPS certified addresses. It's also important to focus on the other technology pieces. Now, data write and match have been in its current form for quite a long time. SAP does have an upgrade path to you, and it's to go to their data services or DQM platform, which is really not designed to work around your industry. It's designed more for the ERP arena, for loading large databases, and not necessarily for the work that you're trying to do and to run your business. So it's important to look at this in that context and make sure that you do look at technology. And what we're going to talk about today from a RedPoint perspective is Satori's solution offering to help round out the replacement solution for your ACE, data write, and match consolidate technology. So the first step, replacing your address correction. If you've been on these webinars in the past or have engaged with Satori, many of you, I believe, understand that we do have a direct replacement for the ACE technology to ensure that you do get your CAS certified addresses. We've, in essence, put a wrapper around our CAS engine, Architect, to accept the ACE input files, accept the DEFs, the formats, and everything as you can currently process, and just change the executable to our platform. In conjunction with that, we can also help satisfy the need for on-premise NCOA move server. We also have a hosted version. We have a 48-month hosted version to get you NCOA link processing in the cloud. So really a range of options to make sure that you're meeting this regulatory need. We've got a large number of clients already using this platform, from small mailers to huge volume distribution organizations as well. And then step two, you need to make sure that you take a look at the data write IQ match consolidate type functionality that you're using within your organization. And what we're going to talk about today with respect to the Satori RedPoint solution is not just a direct replacement for match consolidate and data write. We feel it gives you a great deal of additional functionality, performance, and use within your organizations. And it also allows you to really maintain a relationship with a single vendor. We're supporting a solution through our partner, RedPoint, under the Satori umbrella, along with our CAS engine, along with our pre-sort technology, to be that single vendor for you to work with in this space. So before Lyle jumps into the demo, just a little bit about RedPoint and why Satori choose to partner with RedPoint for this type of functional offering to our clients. So RedPoint itself, as a technology, has been around for quite a while. It was originally branded under a company called DataLever. And about the time that First Logic was going through the acquisition by Business Objects, a number of technical sales and marketing folks actually went to DataLever. So you'd be able to see a lot of similar functionality, threads of functionality, and kind of overall terminology that's somewhat similar between the old Postalsoft First Logic tools and what RedPoint has. But what RedPoint did is it really took this and built it around a more full-functioning ETL data movement and data manipulation tool. So it really brings the best of both worlds together. It's a purpose-built solution around data quality and allows for some real large-scale data movement and manipulation functionality as well. Very high-rated from a Gartner perspective in their Magic Quadrant for data quality. It's a really exciting time for Satori to be able to partner with a company like RedPoint and bring this type of technology to bear. So as we walk into this demo, keep an open mind about what you're seeing. Lyle has a similar background as well, and he's going to walk you through some of these functional components within RedPoint and try to mimic and match some of the functionality that you're probably doing today with respect to match, consolidate, and data write.
All right, so we've got Lyle Myers ready to do a demonstration. Lyle, you all set to go?
I am.
All right, let me hand that over to you.
Well, hopefully everybody can see my screen at this point. And where I want to start it is talking about what we're looking at on the screen here. This is a development environment for what you know today in the SAP world of you've got the different tools of the data IQ, the match, where you have execution blocks. If you're a views user, you've used the wizard to go through and build out some of those. If you're a text editor user, you've got your job files that you deploy today in your production environments. And what we want to cover today here is that in this RedPoint development environment is some of that common functions that you'd probably see in the data write as well as inside of the match. What you see here is that in the yellow box at the top is that this is showing us expressions, something that you're commonly use inside of DataRightIQ or Match, where you're doing filtering or you're writing expressions on a particular field as you're writing out those fields. In addition to that, and the DataWrite side, what you have is that you have the ability to do that name parsing. So in the yellow box here, we've actually got the tool that's showing a very simple function. This is a Boolean statement of if then else. And all I'm doing here is that I'm basically concatenating my name elements into a common field called full name. But inside of the calculate tool, there is a lot of different functions that you're probably accustomed to. I'll go down here and we'll look at the one in the test. There's the padding functions, and there you get into substrings. You also get into replace alls, title casings, edit distance. Those are a lot of the common functions that you're probably accustomed to today. In addition to that, you inside of the calculate, probably one of the most used tools is being able to not only replicate those functions, but also to go through that process of adding fields or adding static values to it, key codes, or again, adding a particular file number, for instance. In addition to that, we also want to look at doing name parsing. And what you'll see here with the name parser is that very straightforward. It can take in and do multiple functions. Name parsing is one of them. It can also go through and genderize that name. It can also go through and has the ability to assign a prefix to it, a Mr. or Ms. And what you'll see in here is that I can bring in a complete name, or I can bring in parsed values and go through that process. Some simple checkboxes here for that selection process. Parse the suffix. Don't want any punctuations in the titles where they're dropping like a doctor or an MD where you might have punctuation in there. That can all be stripped off by a simple checkbox. It also has the ability to do intelligent casing on the name field. You'll see that there's multiple options to choose from: upper, lowercase, title case, and intelligent casing. And there is reference data behind this to support being able to do that intelligent casing process too. You'll see the ability to, again, assign that prefix, a Mr. or Ms. in this example, and you can drop that down and make changes to it. You can actually type what you want in here as well. So the casing function is there for you to go through that process. If we look at an example of doing that name parsing, you'll see that here is the full name going in, and then what you'll see is that there's a prefix assignment, and there is the parse names. Again, you can think of those as AP fields coming out of DataRightIQ. You'll also see that in this case, if I had multiple names in there, I would be able to do that same functionality. If it was John and Mary Smith inside of the name field, it would take and parse it out as John Smith as well as a Mary Smith. And then, of course, here off on the end, I've also done the gender assignment. And that gender assignment is returning a male, female. And of course, if I have an ambiguous, like we do in N. Higgins, it basically returns a null value. So you get an empty space on that one. And then gender can also be assigned on that second name, should there be a second name in the data as well. So that's the ability to do that expressions on a field-by-field basis, and also be able to do that name parsing. In addition to that, one of the common things that we've seen in DataRightIQ is being able to do search and replace, and the ability to go through and be able to actually have an internal table. And that here's the example of an internal table where I'm looking up a value and I'm returning a new value. I'm going to convert Floridas to Minnesotas. This could be an external file, for instance. If you wanted a CSV file, it could sit externally, easily edited, or maybe it's a file that's been provided by a customer that you don't have to go back through and retype as an internal table. You can actually point to that external table. Very simple table. Can be a CSV file, can be a fixed length file. can sit in a database if you want to actually have it sit in the database as well. And that has the ability to go through, and using a table lookup function is to go through and look up the value that's in the data against the table. In this example, looking up Minnesota, or looking up Florida, and then returning the value of Minnesota. And a good example of that is here. When we look at search and place, I didn't overwrite the value because I want to be able to show you that it actually has gone through that the process of a lookup and a return. I could easily take and return that Minnesota back into the state field. The other thing that you'll see here is that a good example is being able to convert to a house format. In this case, what we've done is that we have encapsulated the several functions into here, and this is actually going through and converting into a house format. In this left-hand column, what you'll see is that these are the field names that would be in my house format. In the right-hand column are the drop-down fields that are available in the data file that I'm pointing to. And I can easily map these in. So think of that as your def map. Today in the DataRite IQ in the SAP world, you're actually working with def map. This is a drop-down type functionality to go through that process. And that's going through and converting that into that house format that we're talking about. Here what you'll see is that is the house format that I've converted all my data to: name, out prefix, first name, mid name. So I've got the values that came through a name parsing, as well as carrying my address information, and I had an extraneous field called phone in there. In addition to it, in this example, I've got those extra fields that we didn't do anything with, and I actually appended them right to the end of the data. And again, that is something that can be user-defined and customized to meet your production environment. But it's a common practice that we see as customers that are converting to their internal house format. So there's a common format that goes through the processing. The other thing that we have the ability to do is to go through and do parsing, address parsing. We talked about name parsing up front, but we also have the ability to go through and do this address parsing. Once again, all I'm doing is that in the left-hand column, these are going to be values that I want to consider to be part of my house format or AP fields. And these are what I'm mapping into it. So again, here's the def map of I'm bringing in my data off the input files through a simple drop down. And I'm going to go through and I'm going to generate output fields, the AP fields, parse numbers, and so forth in this example. And you'll see that in this example that we've gone through and parsed, I have all of those output fields. Things like the parsed address, parsed directionals, zip codes, and so forth. So here you'll see that it's extracted the parse number from the address, the pre-directional, the street name, the post or the suffix, any post directionals that we would have, in addition to carrying the city, state, and zip through as part of that parsing process. So it has the ability to go through that and actually do that parsing. In addition to that, what you'll see here is that I'm passing that data into what you know today as a PW list ID, and I have the ability to go through and have this as an internal list ID value, what we call the defined source, or I'm saying I want to call and actually post my source values as all in this example. And you'll see that I can have the ability to assign priorities, whether it internally dedupes, whether it's a suppression file, common terms that you know today in the SAP world, having the ability to go through and create that PW list ID. From there, we move into the matching, and I've got a simple consumer match that is set up here. There are several different types of matching. I can do a consumer match, I can do a business match, I can do a business name match. But the consumer match allows for me to do different types of matching. Not just an individual, but I can do a family match, I can do a resident match, all inside of a single tool to be able to accomplish that function. I can do multiple criteria match inside of here as well, where I want to be able to do name and address, but I want to be able to do like a name and a phone, or a name and a date, for instance. Inside of the match tool, the consumer match tool, I have that ability. Again, we talk about that depth mapping. You can see that I've mapped in my fields into the appropriate columns here. Again, mapping things into PWs is what you're accustomed to. I've also included phone number here. So I have multiple criteria. I have a social security number or an account number actually on the data so that you can actually include that as well. In moving across here, if I can have some settings for the name. The name internally can be parsed coming into it, or the match tool will actually go through that process of parsing that today. Think of it as extended parsing is what you know today in the Match Consolidate tool. I can include matching gender, ethnic matches. So I've got a whole list of different types of settings that are available to go through and set up as part of that match. Some of that functionality that you know today. In addition to that, what you'll see is that what's common today is that knowing that we have things like tight, medium, loose. This goes a little bit further where we have very tight, we have medium tight. So it gives a little bit different scale on this to what you're accustomed to today. And you do have the ability to go through and customize this as well. I don't have to have it as medium. I can actually set that score up as 80, for instance. So that's an easy transition to go through and be able to do that right inside of here without having to go to an internal to be able to manipulate that. You'll see that in here I also have some options for doing address, matching street abbreviations, blanks. One of the shortcomings that in my production days of using the Postalsoft product was being able to do blank and non-blank suites or suffixes and suites. And you'll see that there's some values in here to be able to consider on doing the suite matching as well, blank versus blank and so forth. So there are some drop downs here for you to select from to overcome some of that shortcoming on the Match Consolidate product. In addition to that, I also have the ability to, where we set the score up front here to tight on address, I can get a little bit more granular by coming in here and setting up a number score. I want my numbers to always match exact. During that parsing process, that's what is going through to avail you to use these more granular type approaches to some of the values that will occur during the parsing process. If you don't use the granular values, it will default back to the one that we looked at before, and that is we set address score as a type 88. Something that you know today as break groups is refined or defined as segments here. And you have the ability to go through and have that same segmentation. The common ones in the list are zip code, zip street name, zip street number, street name and street number, and then you can basically go through and control those lengths of it. I know that, again, in production, in my days in production, one of the things that we commonly would use is that we might have our street number set to 5 and trying to account for those longer street numbers that we would see in some of the data. And you do have the ability to go through and set up a custom here. So if you're bringing in a custom break group, you have that ability to define that custom break group in advance and then point to it here inside of the match tool. Some of the other things that you'll see is that I also have the ability to go through and output the match information. All of it, yes, no, that's all defined. And then my source controls, something that we had looked at earlier inside of our PW list ID is to say, I do know that I had source names coming in. I did have priorities, suppression flags, internals, and so forth. Today, if you're using match qualification blocks in Match Consolidate, this has the ability to replicate that match qualification block as well. And it's easily done by going through and defining your sources as suppressions or whether it's going to internally dedupe, but also being able to have a simple one here is don't compare, or the default is compare sources not internally deduped. So again, replicating a lot of that match consolidate functionality. It's done through a series of tabs. And what you'll see here is that we have the ability to go through and have that replicate that match consolidate that you're accustomed to today. We also want to look at things like I've included a couple of basic reports. We talk about the all matches here, where we'll see. Let's see if I have these records that came together, where we have John Smith and Smythe that came together. We see the Dawn Schwartzes that came together across multiple groups. Again, different addresses, but remember, I included phone number here to drive that together, that multiple criteria. In addition to that, we talked about the match reports. Something that you're accustomed to is seeing the single source master and the multi-source masters, as well as dupe counts and single source dupes and multi-source dupes. That common terminology that you know today in the SAP world. We look at a dupe report. Again, if I had multiple sources, this list would grow, but it shows you the record count, the uniques, the masters and the dupes that are coming out of that as well. The other thing is that we have the ability to do is inside of here, I can point to a multitude of different files, CSV files, and the CSV file can be any delimiter of your choosing. You'll see that if I click over on this one here, I can choose that particular delimiter that I have coming in. If there's a header in the record, it'll honor the record so you don't have to have a DMT file that's out there. If I don't have a header in the record, I have the simple ability to go through and have the ability to load a layout, very similar to what you'd have with a DMT. I can actually point to a layout file, and it's very, very similar to what you'd have in a DMT, and be able to read that and bring in that structure that you see here with each one of the fields, what their lengths are, what type they are as well. And I get a little preview of the data at the bottom here too. So it gives me a preview. I can actually see that data. Fixed length fielded files are another one that I can bring in. I can bring in DBase 3s. I can connect to a relational database as well. If I've got SQL Server out there, or Oracle, I have the ability to connect to that, read directly from that, or I have the ability to write to that as well. And the same thing holds true for the delimited files, the fixed length fielded files. I can write directly to those as well. And what you'll see is there's a multitude of different tools over here in the palette that allows for you to actually accomplish all of the functionality that you'll see in DataRite IQ today and Match Consolidate, and even more. There's a sorter in here, and I can put the sorter in at any point during the process. I can go through and do joins. There's a filter function in here, and the filter function can be a simple function of is that, you know, I want state codes to equal Florida, for instance. Or I can get more complicated where I want to write Boolean statements in there, if that else is. So it allows for you to expand that functionality that you have today. And then lastly, one of the things that we have is that you'll see that I have been working from a common interface to be able to do DataRite IQ functionality as well as match functionality. So there is a common development interface to go through and build out these projects. And these projects can then be saved where you can reuse those. All I would have to do is change my input file to a different path that's out there and be able to do that processing. But once again, a common interface to accomplish all of the DataRite IQ and the Match Consolidate functionality that you see today. And with that, I'll hand this back over to Rob, and I think there's a few more slides that we're going to zip through here as well.
Thanks, Lyle. I never get tired of seeing your demonstrations. I assume you're going to be on hand in Minneapolis as well?
Yes, I am.
Perfect. All right. And Brian, it looks like the next slide is going to be for you, a few things to keep in mind.
Great. Thanks, Rob, and thanks, Lyle, as well. So just a couple things to keep in mind. As a company at Satori, we're dedicated to working with customers like you. A lot of us have spent decades in this space working on these types of projects. And in fact, a lot of us, Lyle, myself, our developers, people all across the organization at Satori do have firsthand experience using the Postalsoft products. So we understand how important these technologies are to your business and how critical it is for your uptime, for your production, for everything that you do. And just another note that we wanted to impart is that think of this as an opportunity. It may not seem like it right now, but it does provide you with an opportunity to really look at things in a little different manner. We've shown you a great piece of technology that we've partnered with through RedPoint to help alleviate concerns around match, consolidate, and data write. We can help you on the CAS end of things. We have the best pre-sort platform in the business, and we're here to help. So please, I know Rob's going to, at the close of this session, have some contact information, but please feel free to reach out, engage us. We'd love to have the conversations, understand what your thought process is, and share with you what we're seeing other customers that are encountering the same issues that you are with having to replace technology are doing. So with that, Rob, I think I will hand it back over to you and see if we have any questions.
Thanks, Brian. I appreciate that. And as Brian mentioned, we can do some question and answer at this point. If you've got a question, please enter it into the question box on the right-hand side of your screen. While we're waiting for a few of those to come in here, I want to mention that we are in the midst of webinar planning for 2015. So if you've got some suggestions for webinars that you'd like to see, repeats from the past, new things, questions about Satori software, etc., please contact us with those. There's plenty of time to get them on the schedule. We're also, of course, looking at customer testimonials. So in the event that you've used Satori software and you'd like to go on air with us and talk a little bit about how you used Satori solutions to solve your problems, we'd love to talk to you about that as well. And with that, I'm going to throw the questions out here and we'll see what you guys can make of these. Number one, are there any plans to make CAS and pre-sort modules that can go into RedPoint in an effort to be able to run all the processes at once in a seamless fashion?
So I guess that there's two answers to that. First of all, today you can actually run the CAS and the pre-sort from inside of RedPoint. RedPoint allows for you to call external executables, and that can be called to run inside of there. Secondly is that there has been some dialogue in our product teams to talk about even further integration and it being possibly a single tool that it appears on the palette so that you can stitch that in to say data write, architect, or CAS, match consolidate, and I want to put a pre-sort in behind that. So I know those are things that have been talked about amongst the product team and will be more integrated in the future, but today they can be called inside of RedPoint.
Now, I know that there's a slide coming up here in just a couple where we're going to talk about the Minneapolis Roadshow, but Brian and Lyle, maybe you can give us a preview of what we could expect from you guys in Minneapolis.
Sure, I can step in on that one, Rob. So we've done these road shows. We're kind of on iteration 2 here now. We did our first in Chicago about a month ago, and we're bringing it to Minneapolis the first full week of January. And it's really an exciting opportunity for us to spend time with our customers. And I implore you, even if you're not right in the Minneapolis market, these are great events. It's pretty much the bulk of a day. We start at about 10 a.m. We go till 3:30. Have some cocktails and Q&A after that. But we start the day off around USPS regulatory concerns. I know we're talking about mailer scorecard and some other issues, topics, and trends that our customers deal with around working within the confines of the USPS. And then the afternoon session, we're going to jump much deeper into RedPoint. You saw the session that Lyle did today. It was really to give you a primer and a high-level overview of the types of functionality that's available within the Satori RedPoint offering. We're going to spend a lot more time in Minneapolis and jump a lot deeper into these functions and processes and how does it integrate, how do you use it. So again, great session. I'd implore you, if you're in the market, take the time to come out, and if you're not right in the Minneapolis market, look into it. These are great events. It's great access to Satori developers, product teams, executives, and we've had great attendance and really great feedback on these events as we've rolled through them this past year.
As a native Seattleite, Brian, I have to ask, what is it about having these things in cold places in the wintertime, Chicago and then Minneapolis?
You know, Rob, that's a great question. Seeing as I do live in the upper Midwest, I ask that question a lot as well. I would much rather, I understand where you're coming from, I'd much rather, go to someplace like Hawaii or Florida. And we have such a large confluence of customers in the upper Midwest that it makes sense to go to where our customers are. I know that you mentioned we're planning our webinar series for 2015. I know the same thing is happening right now for these road shows, and our intent is to bring these to you in 2015. And yet, the next one on the schedule is Minneapolis. It may be a little snowy. It may be a little cold. It's just what we deal with up here.
So you're saying Honolulu and Cancun are almost out of the question for right now, then?
Yeah, I suggested those too, Rob, but maybe you can work with our folks in marketing and see if you can get that one.
I will write that down and pass it along. Next question here, and by the way, kind of final call here on questions. If you've got them, please enter them into the question box so we can get them in front of these guys. Got plenty of room right now. Next question is, can RedPoint setups be manipulated only in the interface, or is there a text-based feature similar to Presort or ACE?
Sorry, one more time on that one, Rob. I didn't know if Brian was picking that one up or not.
All right, I think this is probably you, Lyle. It says, can RedPoint setup be manipulated only in the user interface, or does it have a text-based setup feature similar to Presort or ACE?
Yeah, so everything that you see inside of RedPoint actually is stored in an XML format. So can that be dropped out to something that can be opened in an editor? Yes, it's going to be an XML. It won't be in the execution block style that you're accustomed to in the SAP products. But there is a text file that can be pushed out. Those can be manipulated, and those can also be run from a command line as well. Those XML files that represent that workflow that we looked at earlier.
All kinds of options. And Lyle, this one is also for you. If external executables are called, what needs to be set up in RedPoint?
So there's actually a tool out there that allows for you to drop it. It's an executable tool, and what you'll do is you're gonna point to the calling application. In the case of Presort, presort.exe, and you're going to pass the arguments against it. So you would pass the name of the job file and any of the switches that you would have in there, /A or /V, you would be able to pass those as part of the executable. So it's fairly straightforward, single tool to be able to call that executable and then pass the arguments against it.
Excellent. Thank you, Lyle. All right, Brian, I guess you've got some next steps to talk about.
Yeah, thanks, Rob, and thanks, Lyle. So, like I said earlier, we'd love to get engaged with you on these conversations. Please feel free to reach out. I know that the individual reps from Satori will be reaching out to everybody that attended this event, and set up some time with us. We'll get Lyle involved. We'll get one of our other technical experts around RedPoint or the CAS replacement involved as well. Have a conversation, understand what you're doing today, walk through some use cases specific to what you're trying to accomplish, and really work with you on planning how to approach this in the most seamless and productive fashion possible.
All right, and here's the slide I was referring to, the Satori Insight Summit. Any last thoughts on this, Brian or Lyle? Looking forward to seeing you guys in Minneapolis, of course.
Like we said earlier, Rob, these are great events. We'd highly suggest, if you have the opportunity and you have the time, to come out, meet with us, spend some time, get to know Satori as a company, and also really understand how powerful these solutions can be. It's always great as well to interact with your peers in these types of forums. We've had some great dialogue going back and forth with our customers too. So they're a great event, great opportunity. You'll see more of these as we roll into 2015, and really look forward to seeing everybody in Minneapolis.
I have to say that after the Chicago event, I walked away knowing a lot more about RedPoint, even after having done these webinars with you guys. Lyle's demo is not so time constrained, so it's significantly more in depth. And of course, he also, as questions come in from the audience, he's able to manipulate the demo to make those show and to demonstrate actual customer concerns. I was very impressed with the product at that point. It's a lot easier to see in person.
I agree. Great point, Rob.
All right, on behalf of everyone at Satori Software, I would like to thank our speakers for presenting today. Thank you to Brian King, Senior Regional Sales Executive. Thank you, Brian. Always a pleasure.
Thanks, Rob.
And thank you to Lyle Myers, Senior Data Quality Solutions Consultant for Satori Software. Lyle, we appreciate your demo as always.
Again, thanks, Rob.
Thank you for joining us today. Please take a moment to complete the brief survey you will be offered at the end of this presentation so that we can continue to improve our webinar series. As I mentioned, this webinar will be available in its entirety in the webinar section of satorisoftware.com. For Satori Software, I'm Rob Perrin, the Director of Merchandising, and once again, we'd like to thank you for attending. Finally, Satori would like to wish you smooth mailing ahead.